Hi, welcome back to another family engagement short with me. I am Mara Grujanic, the family engagement coordinator at Stevenson High School. And this week we are sharing videos for you and sharing information for you to consider as your student begins this year of high school at Stevenson High School. So everything will be about setting up learning styles, how you can be supportive of your student as they begin their journey at Stevenson High School. This is being recorded live so that some of our members of our community who can't be with us live can engage in this video later through our YouTube channel. And we also have some participants in our conversation now. So if you are in this conversation now, please feel free to use the chat button to ask any questions that you might have during this presentation, and I will see to it that I answer your questions. Also feel free to unmute yourself, but know that you will be recorded. So what are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about sort of that idea of, hey, why is this so important to organize my student at the beginning of the school year? Like, for some students, being disorganized is a really hard thing to manage. And teens can get super disorganized really quickly. And it's not because they're trying to or there's something terrible. It's really because, and I'm not a neuroscientist, but the prefrontal cortex right in the front of their brain is still developing. And so that's all that maturity, right? I know how to make a good decision. I know how to organize myself. So they don't have that. So they need someone to kind of help them. And it's like we talked about yesterday, it's a routine. And the more they practice those routines, the more they become embedded. And as a person who is supporting that high schooler, remember that this is a continuum, a 4-year continuum for you and your student. And the ideal is that they're independent in a post-secondary situation. So their independence is going to grow over the next 4 years. And that's what we talk about, sort of how can you support that growth. So we're going to try the strategies at home to help them with their organization skills. And it's not easy because the minute our teens get to high school, they think, I know everything, I don't need your help, and I can do it on my own. But the idea for you is that you can just be there giving advice, giving suggestions. So what are some of the first suggestions? The first is, I'm sorry, I'm like moving along and I'm not changing the slides. So the first suggestion is to have a really flexible system and do this with your team. Work with your team rather than doing it and then saying to your team, hey, look what I did for you. So because the system has to primarily work for your team. And we may feel we know what works for us, but it may not be the same thing that works for our teams. So, and remember, it's a process. So what do you want to do? How do you want to study? And you, as the adult in this situation, have to be prepared for it to fall apart. Best laid plans. And remember, the teens think they can be super independent. So they're going to come up with the system that they want. And you have to remember the basics of those, right? So maybe help them with just what needs to be done and don't bite off more than they can chew. Sort of, what do you know your team can handle, basics, and then you can add on to that. Because remember, it's a process and it's a habit. So you're building a habit of mind for your team, and they are trying to be independent, but you know that they have to just take it in small chunks. So if we think of it as a process and something that you can review regularly in a calm way, Then you remember that there's going to be mid-steps. You allow for them to sort of reflect on what worked for them and what didn't work for them, and how can they move forward, okay? So what do we want? The most important thing that we want to do is we want to give our teams a place to study, work on time management and organization. So let's think about this. Biggest thing is time management for a high school student, because all of a sudden they have more classes, they have all sorts of co-curricular activities that they can be involved in. Maybe they're involved in, sports and Spanish club, or maybe they have commitments outside of school. So the most important thing for you to do as the adult in the situation is to sit down with your teen and say, what's all the things that you have to do? Write them down. What are all the things you do on Sunday? What are all the things you do on Monday? What are all, like everything? Like I go to school. This is when I wake up. This is when I eat breakfast. Because what you'll be able to do is then find the parts of their schedule where they have blocks of time when they can set the routine to study, right? So you want to block it. It's not like the 15-minute thing. So review, how much time do things take you? And you got to kind of review that for a few weeks for them so that you can find patterns of time for them to be working. And you have to kind of go back to it maybe once a week to say, what's working for you, what's not working for you, right? So how's it going? Because homework is going to be ramping up, ramping up, ramping up. I cannot tell you how important I feel it is for you to be on the same page as your team and attend one of the open houses, either Thursday night at 7 or next Wednesday night at 7. They're virtual, so you don't have to leave. If you have the luxury and the time to do it with your team or with your team in the room so that they see that you are making it a priority, that sends a huge message to your team that that academics are important to you and to them. You don't have to overtly say it, just the fact that you're involved sends a really good message to your team. So once you fill out like what's your day, do it in like a calendar or a planner, or if you don't have that, find a piece of paper and put seven lines on it and some blocks for the time that they're awake and the times that they're awake, and fill it out that way so that they can see visually when do they have blocks of time and you can talk about it. Then list out like how much time do you have for homework? Remember to add time for, if they don't have a way of being healthy, 20 minutes a day to do something like ride their bike, take a walk, do something physical, because that will really, really help them be healthy and get their work done. Also, make sure you add time for meals. A lot of people forget that, and I don't know, you wouldn't think you would forget it, but it's, if you have a consistent time that your family eats all the time, put it in there. And if you don't want your team eating while they're homework, that's your priority, but put that in. So really schedule that time out. The second thing is have some kind of organization system. So that would be, where are you putting the things that you get from school? Our teachers use Canvas for a lot, but there will be materials that they'll have for class. And so what are they doing with those materials? How are they organizing themselves? How are they organizing themselves in their backpack? Is everything just getting shoved in the bottom of the backpack? And if that's their way, you might want to introduce the thought of a folder. But if it's not, go through that backpack with them at the end of the week. I mean, work with what your student does and can do. It's not your system, it's your student system, but you are sort of that mentor. You can help them and guide them with what works for them. Most importantly is have a place to study. It can be a flexible place that, it can be a table that's in the middle of the house that you study in, that's where everybody, does their work. Or if you have multiple students, they all work at the same time, it's a quiet space. But if that's the way it is, have some kind of a basket, a container, not their backpack, that has all of their materials in it afterward, right? So if they need pencils, if there's cords that they need, if there's materials that stay home, put them in a place. It can be a bag, it can be anything that can be easily brought to the space if it's not a dedicated space and used while they're studying, and then put everything back in when they're not studying. So they're not spending that study time looking for materials, right? So the three things are decide on a space that they're going to study. It could be in their room. It could be in their room while they're listening to music. That's your discussion with your student around, is this working? Have some kind of organization, right? So where are you putting your things? How are you putting your things? How are things coming back from school? Do they need a locker at school? I will give you the heads up that a lot of students at Stevenson don't use lockers, but a lot of students do. So if they say, oh, no one uses a locker, there are students that use lockers. And if they don't need a locker, you don't have to push it. What's really important is that you help them with time management and reflection of what's working and what's not working for them. So how can you stay up with what's happening in their classes? There are two things that you need to know, and you'll hear more about them when you attend open house. One is Canvas. That is a website that all teachers have everything for their classes on Canvas. And next week, Monday, during our shorts, we will go over Canvas. And Tuesday, we will go over the interactive report card. But I want to point it out to you, so keep your mind open for it if you attend open house on Thursday night, starts at 7 p.m. That's where all the teachers have all the information for their classes. And what you can do is ask your student to make you an observer on their Canvas page. What that means is it's like you're looking in the window. You can't do anything on the page, but you can see what's happening on the page. And that's really important. Also, as your student starts to get grades, you can look at the interactive report card. But if you make the habit now, start the habit now of checking in with your student once a week, they will see that, it's just part of the routine of what you're doing. And you can sort of become familiar with what's happening on Canvas. So you can say to them, hey, I noticed that you have an assignment that you didn't hand in. Or I noticed that a big assignment is coming up. How are you organizing yourself to get that done? So that you're just sort of part of the organization structure, and you're part of like the overt thinking that your student will start to do to manage all of these. And remember, what you're doing is you're building the habit. Your purpose in this is to help them get things done, but also to mentor them in building that skill so that it becomes an independent skill for them as they move forward. So, and on here, you'll see that the piece on the front is the interactive report card, and the picture in the back with all the squares, that's what Canvas looks like. And again, we'll do that next week. We'll look at that next week. I also want to reinforce to you the support from Stevenson. When you are a family at Stevenson, your first person who is with you for 4 years is your counselor. Your counselor is part of your student services team, which includes a counselor, your dean, your social worker, and that team works together to support your student and your student's healthy transition through high school. So if you have not introduced yourself to your counselor, if you are a parent of a freshman, you will have time with your counselor during open house and shoot your counselor an email. Hi, how's it going? What's going on? If you ever have any concerns about your student or what's going on with your student, make sure you reach out to your counselor, because they meet as a team to talk about any kind of concerns that you have about your student, and they're confidential. So that is the end of our short for today, 15 minutes. I thank you for participating with me today. And tomorrow, we're going to talk about how do you, as a family, help your student to manage their expectations about what is happening during the school year? How do you help them sort of think about what are they going to do? I'm going to get straight A's, or it kind of goes with that time management. So tomorrow we'll talk about that at noon. I thank you very much for being part of this discussion today. And my name is Mara Grujanik. If there's ever anything that you need or have a question or anything, please feel free to reach out to me. I am always here, and I'm here for you. Take care of yourself. Have a great afternoon. And thank you for joining me today for this Family Short. Bye-bye.